I hope everyone's ready to argue on Twitter about whether or not an Oregon team whose best win is against a number 22 USC should be in the playoff. Hello, welcome in everybody to another episode of the Soder Report. My name is Kyle Soder. I'm the host here on the channel. You might know me as the person who made lots and lots of friends with USC fans last week. They took a little bit of issue with the title of my last podcast. I called them our little brother. And I was wrong about that. I'm so sorry, USC fans. We are not your big brother. We are actually your father. So Oregon controlled this game almost from the very start, and it was very for the most part of the game, Oregon had a 2-possession lead, a 2-touchdown lead over the Trojans. We're going to get into it. We're going to go drive by drive. But I did need to try to stretch forth a hand towards my USC brethren. Build bridges, not walls. You know what I'm saying? All right. So, please, we're going to break down the game. We're going to get into some main takeaways, break down the different drives, talk about what was good, what was not good, what can be improved, and then we're going to go with some takeaways from this game at the very end of this podcast. But please, please, please hit the subscribe button, like the video. We passed 31 subscribers, so this is a brand new channel. Thank you all for the support. We are picking up momentum. So thank you all. All right, so the first thing we're going to do before we go drive by drive is get into some main takeaways from this game. I think that going forward, the biggest takeaway is going to be injuries. My takeaway from the injury situation is that the injuries are not getting better at the rate that we expected. Decorian Moore, there were pictures of him prior to the Minnesota game, of him going out to the field in full pads, and assuming he participated at least to a limited extent. If this were the NFL, you would guess that he would be listed as a limited participant in that practice. He probably didn't go down there just to take pictures and then go back to the locker room and get the knee worked on. But he was listed as out last week, and there was another report. I'm gonna get the source right now. But there was a report where Decorian Moore was listed as doubtful. That is according to Ducks Wire. He was listed as doubtful going into the Minnesota game. This week, listed as doubtful again, according to the same service. And he missed a second straight week. So you seriously wonder if his injury is more serious than they're letting on, or if he's just healing slower than he's supposed to. But you would have liked to see him start to get talked about more in rumors about being able to play this week. But that was not the case. Hopefully he's back against Washington to get some more game action and get him back up to speed before the playoff. Gary Bryant Jr. was also inactive for this game, and Evan Stewart was inactive. Now, I've talked a lot about Evan Stewart, a lot more than I intended to the past few weeks. At the beginning of the season, I just expected him to be out for the season. I actually expected him to transfer away from Oregon at the end of the season. That is still a possibility, but the big excitement about him being questionable for the Minnesota game was you were wondering if he'd be able to take limited snaps that game, take a little more in this USC game, play a full game against Washington, and then go into the playoffs as a big part of the offense, as someone who has built some rapport with Dante Moore and be a reliable target and return close to his performance. At this point, if he comes back against Washington and plays limited snaps, he's not going to be a big factor. And then there's going to be a couple weeks of just not playing any games. And then once the playoffs come around, he's not going to be the same player. Maybe he practiced over those couple weeks at best. But playing football in a game is different than playing football in practice. And he's, at this point, it's just not realistic to expect him to contribute at the level he was contributing last season. Even if he comes back against Washington, he's not going to look like the same guy. And it's frankly unfair to expect him to look like the same guy. So at this point, I honestly think that we're not going to see Evan Stewart this year. A patellar tendon injury is a very, very serious injury. I went over the statistics on this show. I believe it's worse than an ACL and an Achilles. That's just my opinion, but just an awful injury for him, and I really hope he's back next year with Oregon. But that's going to have to remain to be seen. It's going to depend on how the wide receiver room shakes up. All right. Another takeaway is the run defense was incredible in this game. They only allowed 25 yards rushing to King Miller. But the pass defense was suspect. And I defended the Oregon pass defense this past week. There were a lot of people pointing out that they hadn't played a good pass offense. That was why they were ranked number 1 in the nation. I pointed out the Penn State game with Drew Rowler, the Indiana game with the Heisman favorite with Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper as games that the pass defense actually played well. But today they could not stop Jacoby Lane. They put the clamps down on Mekhi Lemon, but they could not stop Jacoby Lane or Tanuk Hines. Surprisingly, that was not who I expected to have a 140-yard game. But nonetheless, the pass defense didn't look great. We're going to get deeper into that. The third takeaway is Oregon missed some opportunities to turn this into a blowout. Again, I'm going to get more into it, but the fourth down stop coming out of the half, Dante Moore got picked off on a 1st and 10 at midfield. And then the fumble on the play action to Noah Whittington on a 3rd down. So those are my 3 takeaways. One thing to watch throughout this week is whether or not they jump Ole Miss. I brought up the possibility that they could jump Ole Miss if they dominated USC. And this is sort of in that gray area. I would probably say no, they don't jump over Ole Miss. They certainly had the opportunity to turn this into a blowout. And I believe if they did that, then they would have jumped Ole Miss up to number 6 in the ranking. Okay, let's get into the game. So, first drive of the game. This was interesting. The USC Trojans win the toss, and then they decide to take the football. So, they receive the football going into the game, and right away they're faced with a third down. And if your team decides that the best chance it has of winning is to take the ball first going into the game, go down the field and score, and you start out the game with a 3 and out, you are digging yourself a big hole, both just in the game script and with our good friend Uncle Mo. Your team you run the risk of losing a ton of momentum if you if you decide to receive the ball and then you immediately go 3 and out. That's a huge momentum killer. So Oregon had him in third down, but they convert. And then they had him in third down again later in the drive, and they convert. And then that drive eventually results in a touchdown. So you had the opportunity to take control of the game right away, but you weren't able to get off the field on third down. So I thought that was something notable that we should note right away in this game. Oregon responds right away by going down the field and scoring a touchdown of their own to match them, 7-7. The defense comes up with the stop on the next drive, and then Oregon gets the ball back. I thought that the result on this drive was a touchdown. I thought there were a couple of missed opportunities. On a 3rd and short, Dante Moore missed a wide open Justice Lowe for a touchdown. He still completed a pass for a first down to Jamari Johnson. And then Poncho went down with an injury. I don't believe he did not come back into the game. So that's going to be something else to watch on the injury front. But he goes down with an injury. You come back from the injury timeout, and then you have to take a timeout to avoid a delay of game. That was very strange to me. But then, of course, you go down the field and you put the ball in the end zone. All is well. You're up 14-7. The next thing that I noted was that Brandon Finney was having a really tough time on wide receiver Jacoby Lane, and Tanook Hines. Really, he was not doing that great in his pass coverage today. He didn't have the best day, and it seems like he sort of panicked when he got into those contested catch situations. He's been a very good corner. We've talked about him like an All-American, for crying out loud. But today, I thought it was interesting. It was not his best game. The next drive, you have the ball up 21-7 at this point, I believe. And my guy here on this show, Jeremiah McClellan, drops a pass where he's wide open on third down. That could have extended the drive, and you could have gone up by 3 possessions if you make that catch. And that is not the first time he's had a really bad drop. Remember a couple weeks ago against Iowa, a ball hit him right in between the ones in his chest, and he dropped that one as well. This one hit him in the face mask, and it looked like he slipped coming out of the break. I really like Jeremiah McClellan. I think he's got a really bright future. I talked about him last week as being potentially him and Decorian Moore potentially being just as good as the Ohio State receivers. I think that they have that potential. Jeremiah McClellan also just makes some freshman mistakes, quite honestly. He lacks concentration sometimes when he's going for a catch. He had a big holding call that brought back a first down. I think that's something that's worth talking about. Is Jeremiah McClellan, huge ceiling, but he does make quite a few freshman mistakes. All right. And then we had a Malik Benson punt return for a touchdown a little bit later in the game. USC had just scored, made it a one possession game, and then before they can even get any momentum, no. Excuse me. The drop from McClellan leads to a fourth down. They punt the ball to USC. USC punts the ball back to Oregon, and then Malik Benson returns a punt for a touchdown. So, yeah. And then on the next drive, you really have the opportunity to put this game in a headlock. And Aaron Flowers had an opportunity for an interception right away in that drive. He was about 5 yards past the deepest receiver, but he was turned around. So I don't know why he was turned around just running away from the play. I don't know why he didn't have his head back around. If he was looking at the quarterback, then he would have had an interception right after that punt return for a touchdown, and then you have all the momentum on your sideline. But he didn't, and the ball goes incomplete. And it's no harm, no foul, because there's a bad snap that leads to 3rd and 13, and then Ife Obidegwu picks off Jordan Mayava on that 3rd and long. Gives Oregon the ball back. Going down the field, I believe they're up 21-14 at this point. So these two drives right before the half is where I believe the tipping point in this game was. And yeah, let's get into these two drives, because I believe this is where the game was won for the Oregon Ducks. So this was a chaotic drive. There were penalties everywhere. Unnecessary roughness penalties, face mask penalties, false start penalties, leveraging penalties. It was crazy. It was kind of annoying to watch, to be quite frank. But it was just chaotic. So, Oregon's driving down the field, and Malik Benson runs an out and up, and he catches the ball on the 4-yard line for a first down. But he celebrates just a little too much. The referees throw a flag for unsportsmanlike conduct. They move back 15 yards, and it cuts to Dan Lanning chewing Malik Benson out on the sideline. Which, yeah, you can't have that on the 4-yard line when you're about to take control of a game. So, after that play, Alex Harkey gets a face mask called on him on 3rd down. It would have been 3rd and 1, but they get moved way back out of field goal range. They decide to run the ball with Noah Whittington to get back into field goal range, make it a 44-yard field goal. Atticus Sappington doinks it off the left upright, but USC gets called for a leveraging penalty, jumping over the center. That gives Oregon a new set of downs. And then you're up to the 4-yard line. No, you weren't up to the 4-yard line. You made a couple plays, eventually got up to the 4-yard line, had a 2nd and 1, and then had a false start, so you move back to 2nd and 6 from the 9, and then it was just chaotic with all the penalties. It was undisciplined on both sides, but it ends with a rushing touchdown from Bryce Betcher, of course, because why wouldn't a chaotic drive like that end with a rushing touchdown with your middle linebacker? So you make it a 14-point game, and you keep USC's off the offense for a very long time on that drive. So your defense is well rested to go back out for USC's 2-minute drill. It just felt like a huge accomplishment to put that into the end zone. And then USC's offense comes out. There's sort of a busted coverage. They are able to have a huge play down the right sideline and get themselves into field goal range. They couldn't score. They didn't have the chance to score a touchdown, but they did attempt a field goal, which the USC kicker missed. So you're getting the ball coming out of halftime. USC just had a drive where they went all the way down the field for a chip shot field goal, and their kicker missed it. So they're going into the locker room sort of deflated. You're going into the locker room up 14, in complete control of this game. You've just dominated the line of scrimmage. You're running all over USC. And at this point, I'm thinking to myself, Oregon has the chance to blow USC out. Like, this could get ugly. Oregon could win this game 49-21 or something like that. That was not the case, though, because Oregon comes out of the half and they're met with a 4th down and 1, which they try to go for, and everyone on the offensive line gets past the 1st down marker except Roger Saliapaga. I saw that and I'm wondering how the heck your tight end doesn't fall forward for a 1st down and instead just gets stood up and driven back. How can your entire offensive line move USC defenders past the 1st down marker, but the person performing a quarterback sneak or tight end sneak in this situation doesn't get there? I don't know. I have to assume that it's bad technique for Saliapaga, although I don't know for sure. All I know is the offensive line blocked USC more than well enough for that to be converted, and for some reason, Roger Saliapaga didn't get past the marker. So at that point, I'm thinking this could be another huge momentum swing, because if Oregon fails to convert on 4th down, USC goes down the field and scores. That makes it a 1-score game, and then all the momentum's with USC. However, that's not what happens either. USC gets stopped. It ended on a... One second. Looking at my notes. I believe it ended in a Jaden Mayava interception to Jadon Kennedy. Yes. Jaden Kennedy played extremely well, actually, in this game. I think that this was Jaden Kennedy's best game, where this was probably Brandon Finney's worst game. So That was something I thought was interesting from this as well. So, Oregon is back on the field after holding USC to 0 points when Oregon's offense gave the ball to USC in Oregon territory. So momentum's flipped again to Oregon. And I figure this is where Oregon goes down the field, makes it a 35-14 game, and just completely puts this game in a headlock. Nope. Dante Moore, they convert one first down, and then Dante Moore throws a terrible interception on 1st and 10. So all interceptions are bad, but that was really a situation where you did not have to force the ball down the field. Jaden Maiava had 2 interceptions. One was on a 3rd and long. The other one was on 4th down. So in those situations, you wouldn't call those horrible interceptions. When your team is running the ball as well as they are, and you're up 14, and you're at midfield, and it's 1st and 10, and you throw an interception into double coverage, that's a really poor decision. And that's something that he's got to get better at, quite frankly. That was a really bad interception, and he's gotten away with those decisions for the most part. I think of last week where he threw into triple coverage and Malik Benson just came down with the ball with 3 Golden Gophers around him. This week didn't work out. USC intercepts the ball. And the point is, in this second half, they had multiple opportunities to turn this into a blowout. If their offense had been performing the way they were in the first half, I think that this game would have been over at this point that I just described. It could have been 42-14 or 38-14, something like that. But you just kept shooting yourself in the foot, and over, you gave USC life when you could have taken it from them. So later into the game, I've got a note here that says, Oregon shoots themselves in the foot again, just put the game away. They had multiple opportunities to do that even after this drive that I just described, but they couldn't do it. And then in the 4th quarter, USC goes down the field and scores. They fail on the 2-point conversion. At that point, it's 35-27, and they're absolutely alive. However, Oregon finishes this game off by having a 7-minute drive to regain control of the game, to calm all of us down, and put them up 15 points. So at that point, the game was mostly over. You just needed to kill time pretty much. There was another sort of annoying moment on the next drive where Jaden Maiava just threw up a prayer, and Jacoby Lane came down with another super easy uncontested catch. There were a lot of those, just throwing it up. Jacoby Lane would either come down with it or it would be a pass interference call on Oregon. So I know last year after the Michigan game, the Oregon coaching staff had the Oregon defensive backs practice with boxing gloves on. I wonder if we'll see something like that or hear reports like that throughout the week, because if you get to the postseason and you meet a good, physical, strong wide receiver who's good with contested catches, this secondary is going to be in a lot of trouble. And they've got a few weeks to try to coach up a very young secondary, but it's a concern at this point, even though their pass defense has been extremely good this season. So that's the game. Tell me what you guys think of this game. Oregon won 42-27, so it looks pretty good. Looks like a 15-point victory. It should have been a lot more. If Oregon was playing their best game, it would have been a lot more. They had the opportunity to really turn that game into a blowout. And I believe that if they did, then they could have jumped Ole Miss this week. But since they didn't really, I think they'll probably stay behind an Ole Miss team. Stay at 7. I only bring that up because the difference between the 7th seed and the 6th seed is that the 6th seed will likely play the ACC champion, and the 7th seed will likely play the 10th best team in the nation. So I would rather play Georgia Tech than Alabama because that sets up better just going through the playoff. But you're going to have to play everyone at some point. And yeah, it's just my personal preference. But there's still one more game to be played. There's still some time for these rankings to shake up. And Oregon just needs to take care of business next week against Washington. So, in conclusion, I think health is the biggest thing for this team going forward. And then I also think that the corners need to improve on their contested catches. I can't believe I forgot to say this. Will Stein. Thank you, Will Stein. There it is. Kenyon Sadiq, 6 receptions, 72 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was fed, and I'm very happy about that. So, if you're new to the channel, that's something I get on him for just about every single week at this point, it feels like. But he had a great game. The rushing offense had an extremely good game as well. So, those are my just instant reaction thoughts. It was a little bit all over the place. I'm going to watch the game over again. And I'm going to be back on Tuesday with another podcast. And you're going to get some more organized thoughts instead of the sort of all over the place that you got tonight. But let me know if for my regular viewers, do you like this a little bit more than what I've been doing in the past where I go drive by drive through the game? Let me know. But that's going to be all for now. So thank you all for tuning in. If there are USC fans here watching this, I know there was one cool one where we actually had like a conversation, sort of. Most of the comments were not very cool, but they were funny though. But I did have one cool USC fan in the comments on my previous video. So if you're there, then comment, and I applaud you for coming back after the game. So, thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.